Hello, YouTube. This is Umozo3. So now we're on to lesson 6 of our Python curriculum, and we've already talked about a lot of good fundamentals, a lot of good things to understand about strings and ints and doubles, how to convert between them. And we were talking about the int of x, float of x, and string of x methods, and basically how we can get the integer, float, and string representation of x. The string representation of a number would be really important if you're trying to concatenate that number to an existing string. So if you wanted to say my name is, and then your name, and then you had some variable which was an integer, which was your name, you would want to say string of that variable if you were concatenating it with words. So hopefully that's clear to you. And these are some of the things we've already talked about. So these are basically the fundamentals from the first 5 lessons. Okay, and so there's gonna be important topics that we add on to this lesson. So we're going to be adding on 2 important things. So first we're going to talk about in-place operators, okay, and especially in the context of concatenating strings. And then finally, we're also going to talk about Boolean expressions and Boolean variables, okay? And so that's going to be basically a hefty topic. And so there won't be a lot of time to review. So hopefully you're clear basically on variables. You know, we can understand the basic principles of variables. And we had an example here, right? So we were taking a look at these variables and we said print of a plus b references the values of a and b. So it would print 9 here because b was reassigned from 2 to 4. Even though it was initialized as 2, b took on a new value. And we said we can also reassign a value of a variable according to an existing value. So if you said w equals 20, w equals w plus 2, now w is going to be 22. And this is a perfectly legitimate operation in Python, even though if you saw this in an algebra class, there would be no solution to it. It's not creating an equality. It's not asking if these two things are equal, which they could never be. It's doing a reassignment. So in Python, when we say one equals sign, we're not saying, are these things equal? We're saying set the first thing equal to the second. And then we say y equals string of w. So remember, we got a string representation of that int, and that allows us to basically concatenate w equals with y. And so we can see the w equals 22. That's what we printed right here. Okay, and then this w equals 22, what happened? Well, y equals string of w, and I thought we went ahead and reassigned the value of w to be twice the value of w. That's what we did on line 39. The problem is that y is still referring to the string representation of the original value of w before the value of w was doubled, okay? So then we would say w equals, and then we would be looking at the original value, and that's why we still see w equals 22 here, right? But then if you had now printed w, you would see the 44. And then we could talk about so we can go ahead and run that, and then we could talk about user input. So let's just go ahead and see that, right? So then we could go ahead and see this is actually the new value of w. So by the time we're done working with w on lines 41 and 42, the value of w is actually 44. So hopefully you understand that we can reassign the value of a variable. We're going to be saying a little bit more about that in this lesson. And then we talked about user input, right? And we said basically that if we say x equals input of a string, basically it asks this question. So it's going to print this code, and then it's basically going to stop the operation of the program until the user enters a value. That value is going to be assigned to the variable x. And then what our code here on 44 does is we say, thanks for telling me. And then we have the use of an escape sequence, because we say that the backslash means for this double quote, don't use the double quotes for what you were using them to start the string, but we use them to literally just print a double quote. And then the double quote right next to it is actually to finish the string. So it's going to be thanks for telling me, and then quotes, and then whatever the user entered, and then end quotes. And then that's the end of the total combined string. So hopefully you're following along with the logic there. And hopefully that makes sense to you, kind of how that works and what's going on with that, right? But if you had just said x equals input, then it wouldn't ask a question, right? You would basically just enter something, right? And then you could say, we could set the value equal to something, but the program execution stops until a value is provided for this input. So it's an example of an interactive program. And typically those are a lot more interesting. So here we built a little calculator at the end of the last lesson. And we said A equals input of give me a number. B equals input of give me another number. So here we can't even finish line 49 until we provide this first number. And then after we do, we start line b equals 50 by asking this question, but we can't even finish it until value for B is provided. And then we have to do C equals int of A. So the C is going to be an integer variable, but we have to cast A and B to integers because we say that int of X returns a string, okay, for any question or input X, right? But input of X always returns a string, okay? So hopefully you understand that. And so but then we have to say string of C, right? Because if we're going to add these two integers together, we cannot concatenate a string directly with an integer. So now we can run this code, right? Can you print something? Hell yeah, right? And then thanks for telling me, hell yeah, because that's the value of the variable now. And then you could say, give me a number. How about 105? How about another number? How about 600? And then indeed we get the sum is 705. So this is an example of a program that uses user input. And you can see on the console, if it's an output, if it's something that the program's telling you, it's white. And if it's something that we're telling the program, it's green. So that's the way that it shows up in this particular IDE. That's how it shows up in PyCharm. We're going to talk about in-place operators, and basically what that means is it's just another way of reassigning the value of a variable. Okay, so if you say x equals 5, basically what you can do is x plus equals 2. What this is this is equivalent to x equals x plus 2, okay? And then what you could do is, so now x is reassigned to x equals 7. So hopefully that's clear to you. And then now we could say x times equals 3. So this would be equivalent to x equals x times 3. So now x is reassigned from x equals 7 to x equals 21. And then what if you say mod 3? So now you could say x equals x mod 3. So this would be equivalent to x equals the remainder when that original value of x is divided by 3, right? So now, since they're perfect groups of 3 and the number 21, we would say reassigned to 0. Okay, so now if you say print of x, then we would go ahead and have that, right? So we would go ahead and have 0. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Those are examples of in-place operators, okay? Those are called in-place operators, and it's just basically shorthand notation, okay? We haven't really talked about changing the value of a string, but what if you say t equals toe, and then you say t equals t plus t? This is not an addition, you know, you don't say t equals 4 and then t is reassigned to 8. This is a string, right? So this would basically concatenates the original value of t with itself. Okay, so now if you say print of t, you would get toe toe, because that's the new value of t. What if you said t equals t times 2 from there? So now this would basically repeat the value of t, you know, 2 times. So it would be, you know, t, right? So if you had said t times 3 or t times 5 is like t plus t plus t plus t plus t. It's 5 consecutive concatenations of the string t, right? So now if you say print of t, so now you'd get toe, 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 right? Because it took the already modified t and then it made it twice as large again. Okay, so then you could also say t times equals 2, right? So now it's going to take that value of toe and have 4 more toes. So now you're going to have 8 toes. So now it's going to be toe, 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 toe. Okay, so because now we've multiplied the length by 2 3 times, right? And so then you'd have to see print of t to see that come out. But now you see 8 toes, right? And then you can do the same thing for concatenation with the plus equals. So you could say now t plus equals stop. Okay, so now if you say print of t, then it would just be toe, 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 stop. Okay, so hopefully that's clear to you, and hopefully these are examples of in-place operators, and you can do the same thing with floats. So you could have said s equals 2.6, and then s plus equals int of s. What would this be? It would be s plus equals 2. So now if you say print of s, that would be the 4.6. So hopefully that's clear to you exactly how that code is working and why the output is appearing the way that it is. Let's talk about Boolean variables. A Boolean variable is a variable or an expression or a value. Just a Boolean value is something that either comes out as true or false. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to print a statement that would either render as true or false and try to explore with what's going on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say print of 5 plus 3 is equal to 10. This is not an arithmetic expression. It's not really going to do too much math here as far as, like, it's not going to print the result of a mathematical expression. It's simply going to tell us whether or not this is true or false, okay? So a Boolean value is one that evaluates either to true or false, okay? So certainly, you know, it's going to be one of true or false and not both of them. Okay, so it's an objective expression and it's either evaluates to true or false. Okay, we said that in Python, a equals 2 assigns the value 2 to the variable a. If we write a equals 2, this returns true if and only if a is equal to 2. So it's basically a check for equality, whereas if you just have one equal sign, this would be an assignment operator. So are you assigning the value of a variable, or are you checking to see if the value of a variable is equal to something? So hopefully you understand the difference here. So this would either print true or false. So this either prints true or false, and you're going to get either a capital T or a capital F. That's one difference between this and Java. You're going to see a lot of similarities in the Boolean expressions here. We still have the two equal sign, you know, we still have the greater than and less than, and we have a version of not, but the syntax is slightly different in that with Python we get a capital T and a capital F. With a lowercase, with the Java, it's a lowercase t and a lowercase f. But anyway, if we print that, we see a false Boolean, okay? And then we can go ahead and make it true by making a 7, and then indeed we would get the true there. There's different types of basically operators that we can have to check. So we can have we use basically two equal signs to check for, you know, for checking equality, okay? We can also have greater than for checking greater than, okay? So what if we want to see if one number is bigger than another number, okay? So what if we say a equals int of 402, and then we say b equals, what if we say float of 3 plus int of 55, and then what if we say print of a greater than b? So now if we go ahead, let's remove the code from earlier. Now we can go ahead and run this code and we get true because 402, right? So a is assigned to the integer representation of 402, which is literally the number 402, right? And then this would be b is assigned to the addition of 3.0 and 55, which is 58.0. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you with what's going on with that. And so we're just going to print a greater than b. So this will be checking for greater than. That's an example of a Boolean expression. A greater than b is a Boolean expression because you have this operator here and you're checking for something that's either true or false. So hopefully that makes sense to you. And then you also maybe have a less than or equal to, so for checking less than or equal to. And then you could, what if you said something like print of 5 plus 5 less than or equal to 14 minus 4. Okay, and of course that would return true. But then if you just go ahead and say less than, then it returns false because 10 is equal to 10. So it's greater than or equal to 10, but it's not less. It's not, you know, 5 plus 5 is equal to 10. So it's less than or equal to 10, but it's not less than 10. Does that make sense? So hopefully that's clear to you. And so that's basically what we have going on here. So those are examples of Booleans, right? And those are examples of basically what we can have with Boolean expressions. So you can have basically the word not too, okay? So you can also look for things lexicographically. You can look for things lexicographically. So the way that strings are ordered, so strings are ordered alphabetically. So we say that string A is less than string B if A appears before B in the dictionary. So let me show you what I mean by that. What we're going to do is we're going to say basically, we're going to say W equals Walter, and then we're going to say print of Adam less than W. What this is going to do is it's going to ask whether or not Adam would appear before Walter, the value that the string variable W is referencing in the dictionary. And indeed it says true there for the last thing that we print. And so hopefully that makes sense to you. And that's an example of using the less than or equal to. So it's basically comparing strings lexicographically, okay? So hopefully you understand with what's going on with that, okay? What we can also do is we can think about combining two Boolean expressions. So what we can do is think about the words and or, okay? So we can think about, let's talk about not first. So we can think about using not as a way of inverting a Boolean value, okay? So basically it would turn a true into false and it would turn a false into true. Okay, so hopefully you're clear with some of these things that we've written up here, because I'm just going to try to clear the dashboard here. So if we go ahead and say, if we say print not of 5 plus 2 equals 200, what this does is it evaluates the Boolean expression 5 plus 2 equals 200, and it inverts it. So if that would evaluate to true, then we're going to see false. And if that would evaluate to false, then we're going to return true. So indeed, it's not the case that 5 plus 2 is equal to 200. Okay, we could say something else. We could say print that it's not the case that Yolanda, right, is less than or equal to Yolanda, right? So Yolanda less than or equal to Yolanda, we said that strings can be compared lexicographically, and we said that A is less than B if A appears before B in the dictionary. But here we would say, since these appear in the same place in the dictionary, yeah, we would say that Yolanda appears, basically this is saying, does Yolanda appear no later than Yolanda in the dictionary? And the answer is yes, they appear in the same place. So if you say not here, then you would go ahead and get false. We can also think about and or. So we can use and or to combine Boolean variables. Okay, so if you basically have if you have for a Boolean x, we would say x and true evaluates to x, but x and false evaluates to false. Okay, so if you're basically combining two Booleans and one of them is false, if you combine them with an and one of them is false, then the whole thing's false. But if one of them is true, then you would have to look at the other one to see if the combined Boolean expression will be true. And then we would say for a Boolean x, x or true is true, certainly, but x or true or x or false would be x. So let me show you exactly what I mean by that. What if we say system.out.println of 5 plus 3 is 500, or 5 equals 6 minus 1? If or will evaluates to true if at least one of the Booleans is true. So since 5 equals 6 minus 1 is true, we would go ahead and see the true there, right? But if we say 5 plus 3 equals 600 and 5 equals 6 minus 1, this will be a problem because the first Boolean fails. So we said and evaluates to true if and only if both Booleans are true, okay? So hopefully you understand what's going on with there. I kind of have long comments, but that's why you get the true and the false. And you can put nots into here too. So you can go ahead and say, what if you say not 2 equals 2 or not 2 equals 3? So how would this evaluate? So basically at least one of these Booleans would have to be true in order for you to have this working. So we can go ahead and put parentheses. Usually it's a good idea to put parentheses around your Boolean expressions if you're going to be combining things like not. So then if you go ahead and run this, I think in the PEP and PEP in the Python enhancement proposal, it might want us to have a little bit more spacing. But now if we go ahead and run this code, we get true because not 2 equals 3. So hopefully that makes sense to you. That or evaluates if at least one is true and evaluates true if both of them are true. We can also have Boolean variables. So we could have said s equals 5 less than 100. What if we say print of s or true? So this would evaluate to true for two reasons, because s is true, right? But if you say s and true, then this would evaluate to true because 5 is less than 100, right? But if you say s and false, then this would evaluate to false, right? If you say s or false, this would evaluate to true. But then if you go ahead and flip the sign, you say s or false, then this would evaluate to false. And then there's one more data type conversion that we're going to talk about. So basically you can have something called bool of s, okay? So basically what we're going to talk about in the next video is this Boolean data type conversion, okay? It's going to be a small topic, but we're going to be talking about if else, and I want to talk about one more example of a data type conversion. But basically for a Boolean b, bool of b just returns b. So just returns the value true or false of b. This is sort of the precursor. This is the preview of the next lesson. And then for any value of b, bool of b returns true as long as b is not 0. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that in the next lesson. But that's basically Boolean expressions, and we're going to do a couple more variables because we're going to be putting this in the context of if and else if blocks, and so we need to be good with Booleans before we get there. From UMilso3, thanks for watching, and please subscribe.